The focus of today's workshop is on achieving alignment throughout the dissertation. This is quite an interesting topic because we know that most of the time we are either in line or we either align or we miss alignment. That is within the various parts of the research project. That is why I think it is important for us to look at it, and we will be able to see where necessary, together with examples, how we can achieve alignment. We will discuss various components. At the end of the workshop today, we should have a clear understanding of the concept of alignment in qualitative research. We should be able to highlight and clarify the key elements that must be aligned throughout the dissertation, and to explain how to ensure and check for alignment throughout the research process. But overall, the intent is that as participants in this workshop, we should come away with a clear understanding of the concepts of alignment. That is objective number one. We should also be able to understand what congruency is, or how to achieve congruence, as well as the methodological integrity vis-a-vis qualitative research. That is methodological integrity of within the context of qualitative research, which is the main focus that we lean to. We will have the following as contents: an overview, the research problem and the research approach, the research problem and the research purpose, the research problem, research purpose and the research questions, research problem, research purpose, and research methodology, or what they refer to as qualitative genre or tradition. The research methodology and research methods, research problem and literature review and theoretical or conceptual framework, theoretical and conceptual framework, research questions and research findings, research methodology, research design and data analysis, research methodology, research design and presentation of findings, research findings, interpretations and conclusions, conclusions and recommendations, and finally, workshop summary. I went through these slides and found that they are not less than 80. And I started to work on them to try and beef up by trying to put specific examples that are practical. Now, they went larger and larger. So the likelihood is we might not finish these. And when I see that there is an interesting part which can be helpful and we've not achieved that, we didn't go through it, but time is less, I will jump and rush straight to that so that I can give you a taste of the practicality of how to do this. I find it was a very difficult piece of work that I have to prepare because it was always theoretical, but I have to go into some of the work that I've done to try and look for examples so that every time when we speak, we can make reference. To go through 20 slides without making an example or without pausing, it's actually very boring. You will see when we do the overview. But let's continue. Colleagues, your dissertation is a multifaceted product that should, in the end, demonstrate you were capable of conceptualizing, managing, conducting, and presenting a rigorous and comprehensive qualitative research study. And you will remember when we started introduction to research that we also identified, or we understood, that scientific research has got specific stages that it has to follow. And unless it follows those stages, it is not going to be conceived as scientific. We also learned that has to be subjected to other processes such as peer review, which are very, very fundamental. So some of these aspects will be tested at the end of the study. And during the defense, I've said you have to demonstrate that you are the author and you master and you understand the process. So you might find that what they're saying here will be part and parcel of the testing at the end of the study, where the defense has to take place. But of importance, your final product should also indicate and provide clear evidence that you have addressed alignment at every of the process, and that all of the key pieces of the larger whole are congruent and fit with each other. Most of the time, if you read chapter one should inform you of what you'll get from the rest of the chapters in the research project. And it is very simple to identify if there is misalignment or there is alignment amongst the various components. Because I can just go to chapter 1 and look at the methodological section, knowing that the researcher will give more account to it in some part of the chapters, say chapter 3 or chapter 4. And if I can just pick up that what has been said in chapter 1 is not available in chapter 3 or chapter 4. When you talk about the methodology, I would have identified a misalignment. I can also go to your research objectives or research questions and just look at the sub question, which you said you would achieve or you would give effect to. And I just go round and I just hunt for a place where you said you have addressed the objective. And if it is not there, it is not addressed. It becomes very, very clear. So it is a simple way of identifying that. That is why we are required to ensure that we have got control of the alignment process. We have to achieve this. We need to put all the pieces together that they need to talk to each other. Last year, somebody was talking about the golden thread to me, and I said I didn't know. But when we finished working through the conceptual framework, then he said, no, that is what he meant. Then I went to look for this literature so that I can, outside the conceptual framework, address real alignment. Qualitative research is recursive in that it builds on and depends upon on all its component parts. What do you do at the beginning of chapter 1, at the beginning of your project? You always revisit, because as you continue with the rest of the research projects, with the rest of the stages, they must speak to the initial components. When you find that they don't speak to each other, then you go and revisit and revise. And I think we have had this, we have demonstrated it. When we spoke about the research topic, we said it is provisional, in that when more insight comes and it becomes more clearer what we want to research about, then we can refine the research topic. Even our earlier assumptions do change. The way I used to view what tourism is before I could undertake the study, actually it changes as soon as I start engaging into literature and in the rest of the research project. Everything changes. This is because research is reiterative. It repeats itself, but it also builds on earlier components. And this is what they refer to when they say it is recursive. It builds on previous sections, but it's reiterative in that it addresses the same concept several times in different perspectives. And to us, when we do that, actually it helps us to understand research better. Because when we repeatedly talk about one concept several times or 20 times, then it becomes clear what we're talking about. And this leads to clarifying the specific concept. So the reiterative way and the recursive way helps us to ensure a streamlining. Making sure that you have achieved alignment among all the key components and elements means that your study is tight in terms of the methodological integrity. Because doing these things, we do it through method. A method is approach, methodological integrity, the way of doing things. We should be sure that we master that. Methodological integrity is essential for both at philosophical and practical level, and is an indication of a study worth of quality. There are numerous key elements and components that must be aligned and remain consistent throughout the dissertation so that the study remains methodologically sound. This process begins when the researcher identifies a worthy topic, goes on to formulate research problem and purpose of the study, and then develops a set of appropriate research questions to address the study's purpose. All these that have been mentioned, you can see I've put them in black. The topic, the research problem, and the purpose. The research questions, the study purpose, all of them are elements that must speak to each other. You will remember that when we spoke about the research topic, there was reference that sometimes the research topic is referred to as a problem. And it's not actually a chicken and egg thing, because it is actually not the topic that starts. No, you give your problem a topic. In other words, what starts is the problem that you experience, either in life or you identify a theoretical problem, you want to undertake study on that one. So it is a problem that needs a topic that needs to be put in place. So we need a relationship between the problem and the topic, or between the topic and the problem. Then the purpose, because all of these speak to each other and they bounce, then they are connected. That is what we need to achieve if we want to ensure that our studies or our research projects are actually aligned. Because the research questions are directly tied to the research purpose. Answering the questions must, in the final analysis, accomplish the study's purpose and also contribute to shedding light on addressing the research problem. The problem, purpose, and research questions constitute the essential thrust of qualitative study, and clear and evident alignment among these three core elements enhances the logic, coherence, consistency, and transparency of the research overall. The way the workshop has been packaged, I followed the logic that was there in the literature. I packaged all these concepts together to ensure that we unpack a set per time, a set per time, a set per time. And at the end of the day, we could indicate how generally we could ensure alignment in every element of the research project from beginning to end. But it should be noted that each research methodology within the broader field of the qualitative research is founded on a particular philosophy that influences the type of research design and methods used. I want to remind you that yesterday we were dealing with the selection of the research approach. Now, and there we dealt with the research philosophy, and you might have forgotten, but what I refer to by research philosophy is the worldview. Remember, we spoke about the worldview, which is what a researcher brings to the research process. So here they are also emphasizing that your worldview influences you to make a choice of the research design or the research methodology and the methods that are used, because your methods are in line with the research design or the research methodology. So all of them come into place because we have got worldviews. We've got a philosophy, a way in which we view the world. That is also the way in which we will influence and impact on the research project. And our worldview determine how we see or we execute the research project. Therefore, one of the core issues related to planning and conducting methodological sound qualitative study is how to choose an appropriate and suitable methodology that will address your research problem. You see now, this is very, very important. How do you choose it? Will it address the research question? Will it address the research problem? Is it in line with the research topic? Having made this choice, colleagues, you will thus proceed to design your study within the framework of the methodology that you have selected. Once you choose the research design or the methodology, then it means you're going to continue or proceed along the same line. You are guided by its principles, and there's a philosophy that lies behind it. All of the components of the design process, including the theoretical or conceptual framework, methods of data collection, data analysis, and data presentation, will need to be aligned with and reflect the principles and features that characterize your chosen methodology so that there is a conceptual fit across all levels. I will make some examples to show how the theoretical or conceptual framework uh, can be aligned with all the other components of the study, or how the study's components can be aligned with the conceptual framework or the theoretical framework. This might include the methods of data collection, data analysis, and data presentation, and many more others. So we will work on those.
All the components of the design process, including the theoretical or conceptual framework.
Please, mute. Mute, please.
Sorry.
In essence, the theoretical or conceptual framework, research design and research methodology together must generate data appropriate and adequate for responding to the study's research questions. You will find these things being used interchangeably. Let me tell you something. When we deal with a theoretical framework, you will find that sometimes we might want to implement a specific theory in our research in which the theory, the principles from the theory will guide us throughout the entire study. So this would mean that we would be guided by a theoretical framework in executing the study. But on the other hand, if you consider a conceptual framework, you do not have a conceptual framework before the end of the research project. So a conceptual framework has to do with an inductive approach because your study builds a conceptual framework. So at the end of the study, the conceptual framework also becomes part of the findings or the results. It is part of the output. But you will see that we would have linked it in all stages of conducting research. Finally, once you have conducted the study, your conclusions should tie together the study's major findings. Your recommendations which follow your findings and conclusions are in turn the application of those conclusions to practice, policy, and future research. Alignment or lack of alignment is often a key question or issue at the time of the dissertation defense. I've said this, that at the end of your studies you defend, particularly at PhD level. Here, the author is actually confirming that. The final dissertation manuscript should provide clear evidence that you have addressed alignment at every step of the process so that the study reflects methodological integrity. When anything that you write, I repeat this every day, you don't write for yourself, you write for us, or you write for the second person. So when you're writing, you just try to put yourself in my boots. Whether I would understand you, I would not. If you find that a second person, if you guess that a second person would not be able to understand you, please try to change your writing. And this is the reason why most of the work that we do is subjected to peer reviewers. So it's a good thing to bounce your work with a third person or a second person. They can give you their views that this we understand or this we don't understand. This makes sense, this does not make sense. They will even tell you it does not have linkage because there is no a golden thread that is visible. A lot of aspects are disjointed. We'll point to you where disjuncture is and where alignment is. Checking for and achieving alignment is something you should be aware of at the very start of your study, so that you ensure it happens throughout the research and writing process. And at the completion stage, you need to check, piggyback, to find out if there are discrepancies, disjunctures, and if the pieces are not jointed together, where you will revisit the importance of alignment again to make sure that all the elements that constitute your entire document are aligned and that there are no holes, gaps, or inconsistencies. We were going to sing this song to the end of this workshop, but we are advised alignment does not come at the end, and alignment does not happen during the course of conducting research only, and alignment does not only happen at the beginning. It should be known, and this is the reason why today we are still at the introductory part of doing research, that we are addressing it, so that when you start writing your research proposal, or if you have already written it and then you are alerted today that you might have forgotten this, you have got an opportunity to go and revise. And it will also equip you and assist you so that when you move forward, you don't forget the aspect of alignment.
Does it mean that when you start, for instance, your thesis or dissertation, from the beginning, your first chapter should be aligned already to the last chapter? Or does that alignment come as you proceed?
When you start writing chapter 1, which is a proposal, you are already pointing towards the rest of the stages in the research process. You are pointing even towards the conclusions. I want to cite an example. The purpose of this study is to develop a framework for sustainable tourism, or a tourism framework for sustainable development. So in other words, you are saying the end product should be a sustainable model for tourism development. But you are writing it now. Maybe you haven't even finished chapter 1. You are still proposing and say my objective or my main purpose is to make sure that the framework is there at the end. So when you move from where you are, every time your goal would be to have that product. That product is only going to be realized if the objectives are pointing towards it. So this chapter, when we see your last product, we will pick it back and say, oh, is it talking? Is this what he said or she said she would produce? Then we go to the objectives or to the purpose of the study. No, he has got a tourism framework, but it does not appear anywhere in the study. This study is not linked, streamlined. It does not have alignment. So this person would be advised to link the output with the intent, which are the objectives. So alignment starts from the beginning.
I think for me now, it's for clarity. Sometimes I get confused to say what is a theoretical framework, what is a conceptual framework, because the understanding that I was given is that as you write your proposal, you need to be able to reflect on the theoretical stroke conceptual framework. And then we have indicated that the final product of once the PhD has been completed, for example, would be a conceptual framework. So I really want clarity if they are the same or what exactly, as I write a proposal, which one do I put in my proposal as part of what informs my line of thinking? Thank you.
Then I actually wanted to make an example of an alignment, which is something that I applied today. So
Yes.
in my research, as I was doing the literature review, this is just mini literature. Going into the proposal, I realized that the emerging AI that comes across all the time. This was something that wasn't initially even part of my problem statement or the topic. I then enhanced the topic to include in them, we take into consideration the emergence of changing technology and AI. So the topic change, the problem statement change a bit to include the emerging AI. And there was a research question now specifically addressing AI with the objective of an AI and going into the conclusion of the summary indicating AI. So there was alignment throughout all the steps of the proposal to indicate this new. Even on the literature, there was a bit of a subtopic discussing AI.
A beautiful example. So you at a certain stage you realized this was not there originally. Then it means it is not there in earlier stages. You went back, piggyback, revised. And henceforth, from where you are when you continue, you will ensure that alignment with that emerging concept. Very beautiful.
I would like to know, when you talk about theoretical framework that must align to the research, does that mean as we are doing research, our spectacles should be theoretical framework? So there's no research that we can do without referring to a certain theory.
Okay, I want to answer this together with the earlier one. A conceptual framework is not a theoretical framework, but a conceptual framework is made out of theories. A theoretical framework is made out of a theory. In other words, a theoretical framework uses theory. And what I've noted is that in most instances, the theory is being implemented or it is tested. The quantitative researchers would test that theory, then they can revise it or confirm it. In qualitative research, you apply the principles of that theory and you can reflect the results as confirming it or as going against it. And I think with specific recommendations, it might lead to the revision of the theory. So that is a theoretical framework, one theory. But where you start using more than one theories, if you start using more than one theory, then you've got 2 or 3 theories. You will find that each of the theories has got principles. We don't know how many. One can have 5 principles, the other one can have 4 principles, the other one can have 3. So when you see that the theories are relevant to your studies, and it is not all their principles that are relevant, you will choose principles from all the 3 theories. You will choose principles that are related to your studies or that address your studies. Those principles, you will use them to build a conceptual framework. And that is what will happen. You can give effect to those principles. You can investigate them. You can use them in the collection of data. You will also have to unpack them under the literature review. So they need to be understood. And when you develop the data collection instruments, they are the basis. And at the end of the study, then it means the conceptual framework will also emerge as part and parcel of the product, because it cannot exist there upfront. It is not something that is there, because remember, you are borrowing principles from different theories. So It has never been there. It exists because you want to use it in your study, and you build it while you are giving effect to those principles. On the other hand, you are building a conceptual framework, and there are specific. I noted that specific universities would put it as a requirement that actually they will put it as a guideline that at M level and at PhD level, please base your study on one or more theories. Either implement it or you do what we're talking about, the conceptual framework. I only implemented one theory in one study. And in another study, I did not see that I was building a conceptual framework. I were at the end of the study, let's say last year when I wanted to address the conceptual framework in a workshop, I looked at one of the studies and see if I can find something to use as an example. And the tourism framework at the catchment of Lake Fundudzi. Then when I went through that studies, I found that it is easy to use as an example. So then I realized it's closer to what we refer to as the conceptual framework. But all the other studies did not have, it was only one. Yeah, and it was explicit that I was using a theory of organizational design, establishment of catchment management agencies in South Africa. So different institutions will have different requirements, and the guidelines will be like that. And in your colleges, they should provide guidelines. I noted there was, I met someone actually a week ago who's doing at UNISA, who did not even give effect to any theoretical framework. And when I mentioned it, she was so surprised. And I had to comment on her work, but I didn't comment it formally, because if guidelines did not require her to produce or to work with a theoretical framework, then I became ignorant also.
Thank you so much. I wanted the clarification. At what exact point do you consider to develop the conceptual framework? Is it at the end of the literature review or as an end product of the empirical part of the study, or it's in both?
Okay. Let me make an example. You must remember, your purpose, your study background, I think even your statement of problem must make reference to the theoretical framework. And if there's no theoretical framework, then you can make reference to the conceptual framework, to the principles. And there is no way that you can do this if you don't study literature. So it means even in your preliminary literature review, you need to study these theories and know which ones are relevant. And we said the way in which you know and you can identify relevant theories to your studies is when you see recurring concepts or concepts that are dominant in your study. You would have written a lot in your literature. You could see these are always coming out. These statements are coming out most of the time. So they refer to specific concepts. So those concepts, you find that they are given effect or they relate to specific principles of the theories. So that is how you can identify your theories. So you don't only do it at the literature review. Even before, you could go to the chapter on literature review. But at the literature review section, you must dedicate a section that unpacks the theoretical framework or the conceptual framework. This is what I think the study leaders would want to see, and they should, of course, advise like that. Can we continue? We can still piggyback on it because I've got an example. where I'm demonstrating how the conceptual framework has been given effect to in one of the studies. Now, let's look at the research problem and the research approach. The starting point of any research study, and indeed the first major challenge in conducting research, involves identifying and developing a sound topic. This we've dealt on many occasions with. Now, once you have identified a genuine interest, you will need to begin narrowing your topic. The process of developing a researchable topic is a process of idea generation, a movement from a general interest towards a more clearly defined idea around a research problem. The goals of the theoretical research are either to contribute new knowledge or extend current theory to a new area. You hear now? Extend current theory to a new area. When you are implementing that theory, if you find that you confirm it, you can extend it. Or you find that no, the findings are different from what the theory looks like, then you make a specific recommendation for the revision of the theory. The goals of applied science, of applied research are to use knowledge to contribute directly to the understanding of problem or generate a solution for problem. And yesterday we were talking about the participatory action research and its role in empowering rural communities. And a case study of the catchment of Lake Funduzi tourism framework was presented. So it was an example of applied research that it should eventually lead to changing the lives of the people. This is in line with the transformative paradigm or worldview. But the author says you should be asking yourself, in your research, when you look at your research approach and the research problem, they say, you must ask yourself, is my worldview aligned with a qualitative research approach? Does my intended research problem fit with qualitative research? Do the problem, the purpose of the study, and the research questions have the potential to serve the goal of the research, either applied or theoretical? Now, they are saying you cannot choose qualitative research just by forcing it. You must first test yourself. The way in which you can test is to ask all these questions. If they really are positive and you don't have problems with them, it means they are confirming that you can use qualitative research as an approach. But if they don't confirm, if your responses don't confirm this, don't force the use of qualitative approach. You can use other approaches, such as mixed methods and quantitative approach. The other question is there sufficient theory to explain the phenomenon or a reasonable solution to the research problem, sometimes referred to as the so what test now? Now, here they refer to the research problem and they ask you if there is a sufficient theory that that can assist in actually addressing the research problem. That question is not asked when you are already doing your research, your literature review. No, it is done at the beginning when you are conceptualizing the study. You are unpacking the research topic. You are working on the research problem or the research background. As a field, qualitative research is broad and deep, while studying nuanced in many ways. The overall field itself is defined by key characteristics. To begin, you will need to become knowledgeable about the characteristics of qualitative research, including strengths, challenges, and limitations associated with the approach to the inquiry. Oh, I just said quantitative researchers, they conduct their research to describe current conditions. They also investigate relationships and study cause-effect phenomena. That is why they can even upfront, before they could even conduct their research, they make predictions. They use hypotheses to actually guess what would be the outcomes between what would be the cause and the effect. If animal A jumps up and down, it means animal B will also jump down. So this is what they predict. But qualitative researchers do not do that. In contrast, qualitative research is suited to promoting a deep understanding of social setting or activity as viewed from the perspectives of the participants. This implies an emphasis on exploration, discovery, and description. We don't go there with answers. We don't go with ready-made answers. But in quantitative studies, we can go with ready-made answers. We can request our subjects or researchers to choose from what we have decided for them as answers. That is very different from what qualitative researchers do because they explore. And in exploration, they listen to the sources of information. They listen to where the problem is, and they also understand the context within which challenges and problems or life experiences take place. Both research approaches, that is quantitative and qualitative, they involve complex processes in which particular data collection and data analysis methods assume meaning and significance in relation to assumptions underlying the larger intellectual traditions within which these methods are applied. So there are approaches, there are methods that are used in the collection of data. However, rather than determining an effect or predict or describe the distribution of an attribute among populations, qualitative researchers are interested in understanding how people interpret their experiences and how they construct their worlds. The two paradigms or orientations that inform qualitative research, namely constructivism and critical theory, both place emphasis on seeking understanding of the meaning of human actions and experiences, on generating accounts of meaning from the viewpoints of those involved, not the views of the researcher. Although it is argued that in qualitative research, the researcher is also, he plays an important role because he is not detached from the process of collecting data and interpreting the data. So the process of qualitative research is value imbued. You have got your values because of your world views. You have got a specific position that you occupy in research. And they refer to it as positionality, that it will influence, it can unduly influence the outcomes of the research if you are not careful. And that is the reason why it is recommended that when conducting research, you must adopt a reflexive position, that what you believe, your belief system, your worldview must not impact negatively on the findings. If the people whose life experiences are reported about, they should not be dominated by you. We know that because you are the one who's writing or interpreting, you would air a voice, or you would indicate how you see it. But let the original statements remain there. And this is what is always recommended when you do data analysis or interpretation or presentation, that some of the original statements should be retained as they are, so you don't lose people or you don't misinterpret. By doing that, then the viewpoints of those involved are maintained. That is what qualitative research does, and it is not the same as what happens in quantitative research. But both paradigms assume that reality is socially constructed and that there is no single observable reality, but rather multiple realities or interpretations. From a social point of view, every individual experiences life differently, whether they live in the same context, in the same village. They will not experience crime in the same way. The other one would say crime is too much here. The other one would say no, crime is too much to the people who don't take care of their premises. So it means that everybody interprets life situation in their own view. And this is allowed in research, that if you get different views, it doesn't mean that there's someone who's telling a lie. Those views are important as findings. That's why we allow you in research to bring the contradicting ideas, and you use them when you make interpretations, what they imply to you. Qualitative researchers study individuals and groups in their natural settings, attempting to make sense of the interpret phenomena in terms of the meaning that people bring to them. The intent of qualitative research essentially is to examine a social situation or interaction by allowing the researcher to enter the world of others and achieve a holistic understanding rooted in the real world complexity, and to describe, explain, and communicate that understanding. When you go to a research site, you go there as Korumbi or as Konanan. You carry your head there with your environment in your head, with your vendor culture there. But when you get there, the environment is so different. You are baptized, then you are swallowed there. Then when you describe and you explain, then you must do it really in the way that you explain it and in the way that it is presented to you. So you don't have to misinterpret. Otherwise, your findings are going to be obscured and they would not be reliable. Since description, understanding, interpretation, and communication are the primary goals of qualitative research, the researcher is the primary instrument for data collection and data analysis. And we have said because of that, elements of bias might be there because this guy collects data. He can write what he wants. People can tell him, we are suffering, we are hungry here, or there's no provision of basic services. So a poor quality researcher would write now. People complain and they tell us that there is no good services when good services are there. You see, that is misrepresentation. That is an element of bias that is there. And this is due to the fact that the researcher himself is part and parcel of the entire process. He facilitates the process, he collects data, then he interprets it. And this is not what happens because the paradigm that actually dominates the philosophical view of the object or positivism, and the principles are objectivity, that you detach yourself from the process of collecting data. You must stand at a distance. You must not pollute the data. That is what the positivists say, and they say it in support of the scientific principle. Scientific research is said to maintain that. But in social research, you must remember that life is what we make of it. And therefore, human beings are the creator of lives, and they are the people who experience this life. So answers are not there for us. Answers for life are not there. Answers for life and for what we live is what we do. What we do is called life because we live it. So that is what in qualitative research is very, very important. And the danger is that qualitative research can be prone to a lot of bias. And that is why we have emphasized the need for reflexivity, that looking at yourself, that you don't unduly influence the outcomes of the research. Whereas in quantitative research, the role of the researcher is to remain detached. We've said this with the aim of being as objective as possible because of the paradigm of positivist, which is a worldview. In qualitative research, the researcher as an instrument openly brings her or his experiences and perspective to the research. And this is what I said, it is positionality. Qualitative research does not purport to be objective, no, is its goal. However, to be rigorous, qualitative research docs strive to be transparent and openly. This is what we must read and must become clear in the process that we have followed. That you've legitimately and you have clearly documented and communicated all decisions taken through the research process, so that that transparency will demonstrate to us that this is credible research that lacks element of bias. Qualitative research seeks to establish credibility, dependability, and confirmability, and is concerned with the issue of transferability rather than generalization. Generalization mainly from quantitative aspect, and there are ways of ensuring generalization. But in qualitative research, we're not worried about generalization, we're worried about transferability. What we have done and the experiences that we've learned in one study area, can we use it to achieve objectives in a different area? That is how and what ways the findings of a particular study might apply or be useful in another similar context. That is what qualitative research is proposed to do. We have done the research approach. Now we are going to see examples now, starting with the research problem and the research purpose. We will be able to demonstrate that in some instances, these can be streamlined, and in some instances, if we miss it, cannot be streamlined. I'll go through a few slides and then bring a living example. And after that, I'll pause, then we can engage. Your study's research problem and research purpose contain similar information, but are presented in different ways. So we should be able to see the research problem and the research purpose speaking to each other in the way that these people are saying, is that they should be saying the same thing from a different perspective or in a different way. Let's mark that one. The problem includes some background. This is the statement of problem, includes background and context for this issue that is in need of exploration, and also provides a rationale for the importance of the topic. You would have even identified the gaps under background. You would have introduced the research problem or the research topic. But what the research purpose does is to extend the research problem. Because in a research problem, you would have identified a gap. Then, in order to close that gap, something must be done. And something is only expressed in a way of a purpose statement. Because a purpose statement is a statement of intent. It is the aim, is the objective, that which I want to do in future. And you will find that that which you want to do is given effect at the design section. You will remember we said there is the methodological section that presents a plan to be followed when you conduct a research process or a research project. And that is where all what you will do is presented. But it is first captured as an intent under the purpose statement, which we are hearing is the extension of the problem. Then we'll demonstrate that later on in an example. The problem statement serves as a foundational role in that it communicates what is the formal reason for engaging in the dissertation in the first place. The problem statement is the discrepancy between what we already know and what we want to know. We will say, we already have this problem, and it is a discrepancy. So then it justifies the reason. Then it also shows there is a gap, something must be done. That something then will be stated as a purpose. And I've got portions of a statement of problem, which I'm going to read for you here. And when I finish, then I will go to the statement, to the research purpose statement, and see if it makes sense, if it is in line. It says, even if much can be learned from the tourism frameworks presented above, it is clear that each of them has challenges of sustainability in one way or another. In particular, most of the frameworks have not been able to address the issue of tourism skills and empowerment. These are part of the gaps that have been identified under the statement of problem. Also, none of the frameworks were meant to promoting tourism at a destination with a unique tourism resource such as Lake Fundozi. So this is in addition to limited local benefits and strategic tourism planning that have been identified as among the most serious constraints of tourism development in Southern Africa. And we are saying that the frameworks that are there have these gaps. And we're justifying why we want to develop another framework. But another paragraph under the problem statement says, based on these challenges, if any of the above tourism frameworks can be implemented as they are at the catchment of Lake Fundozi, there is a strong possibility that they will not result in sustainable development, because we want to ensure sustainable development at Lake Fundozi. But on the other hand, the development of a framework that acknowledges the gaps in existing framework while maximizing on the success stories may enhance sustainable development in the catchment of Lake Fundozi. In going forward, therefore, it is necessary to develop. Now it points at what should happen. It's necessary to develop a framework that will be anchored on the triple bottom line of sustainability and be able to address the unique situation in the catchment of Lake Funduzi. The last statement actually says something must be done, and that is to develop a framework anchored on the triple bottom of sustainability. No, we want to see if the purpose statement will capture that purpose, that will show that something has to be developed that has to do with sustainability. And here is the purpose statement of that research project. And I think this is not the best statement according to me, but I'm using it as for purposes of example, and it will serve us to critically look at it and see if it has got linkages with the statement of a problem. Whereas, whereas the problem statement mentioned a lack of sustainable development, it gives an opportunity to craft the purpose that seeks to pursue sustainable development. Because the problem statement itself has said there is lack of sustainable development. Okay, it also said something should happen. So let's just read this purpose statement. The purpose of this study is to develop a tourism framework for sustainable development in the catchment of Lake Funduzi. This purpose is based on the premise that Lake Funduzi catchment has a significant potential for tourism development and that it may become an important tourist destination. More particularly, the study aims to achieve the following specific research objectives. As I've said, this is not the best one. I want you to tell me if there is a thread and if there is a linkage, or you see a disjunction between those background or those problem statement paragraphs and this purpose statement. Then we can debate what should have happened. Or if it is correct, then let's agree it is correct. I'm giving you an opportunity to make some comments. Do you think the problem statement has got a linkage with the purpose statement, or it does not have? Does this example serve the purpose or it does not? I just took a problem statement and I just took a purpose statement.
Yeah, I think it does have a link. I think there is this thread going through. I'm just a bit worried about the premise.
Okay, the premise says the purpose is based on the premise that Lake Funduzi catchment has a significant potential for tourism development and that it may become an important tourist destination. You are worried because of that, ne? Well, what is the worry? Are you saying this is not supporting the purpose statement? Or how irrelevant it is? What is the understanding?
Yeah, I can see the connection, but I'm not sure that it's clear enough.
Yes.
And I'm also, you know, have we said what framework we're using, or don't we need to at this point? You know, what methodology we're using, or is there no need for that in the purpose statement and our question?
Yes, I think I think now my understanding is that I should have included the study location. I should have indicated the methods and the subjects that will be included. Or is it the sampling design, something like that? I think there are 3 elements that are not included in the purpose statement, according to me. And I agree with you that even that premise, even if it was not there, if I've included those 3 elements, I think it would have improved the purpose statement. I agree with you. And this is how I'm happy. This is how I think you are doing well in terms of analyzing. And I bring these things so that they help us in doing that one. So those are my understanding. I agree with you. Is there anybody who has got a different view, a different perception, or a different understanding?
I think what I wanted to mention, you have just mentioned it. I was struggling to see the connection of Lake Funduzi. It's its potential is not in the problem. But I think you have brought it out.
I missed the last statement. You are saying it is not in there?
It's not in the statement problem. Its potential is not in the statement problem, but it now becomes a premise.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
I think the statement is very huge, and I thought it is too big. And somewhere I've mentioned that the lake has got potential to bring a lot of tourist activities, but I did not make an extract of that. It is there somewhere. It's only that I took parts that I thought would be related to the purpose statement, but I've missed that one also. Yeah, so it does not come clear that it is potential because it was not there in the problem statement. Yeah, that is also a disjuncture, correct?
I'm just a bit confused about something.
Yes.
When you explained the research problem, you said that it includes background and context for the issue in exploration and the rationale for the study. So, from my understanding, the rationale for the study is basically like what purpose does the study serve? And it's starting to seem to me that rationale and research purpose is the same thing. So I don't know if I'm the one that's lost or there is a distinction between the two.
You see, when you do a preliminary literature review, you do it to be able to write your introduction and study background. There, you would identify gaps.
Okay.
And there, your gaps is actually the reason for conducting the study. And that reason is, in other words, the rationale. Why would you want to undertake the study? It's because there is a gap that need to be filled. Say, for instance, they've only studied that Lake Fundudzi is an inland lake. But they did not study Lake Fundudzi as holding some cultural significance, because the Bavenda, customarily, they perform rituals there, and it has become part and parcel of their culture. So if that has not been explored, one can come with a topic that addresses that. So it's closing a gap. So we would say this is a rationale. So that rationale can also, apart from it being identified under the introduction, you can also reflect it under the problem. You would say the problem is that cultural perspectives has not been explored. As you see, you would have written, given an account to show that it is a gap under the introduction. But why do you want to undertake the study is then indicated again in the problem statement. I want to do it because I want to close the gap where the cultural studies were not undertaken. So that is a rationale. And that, if I've mentioned that rationale, you will find that my purpose statement will say the purpose of this study is to explore the cultural perspective with regard to Lake Fundudzi, which is an inland lake. I would have said, no, they've only studied its geography or its physical characteristics, natural characteristics. They did not touch anything about culture. Then my purpose statement and my study problem, my statement of problem will be related, because all of them would talk about the vacuum in the cultural perspectives and the need to do it as part of the purpose. Are we together there?
Yes, we are together. Thank you very much.
So we can continue now. The statement also illustrates why the care that is the reason why your study should be conducted. Now, this is the rationale that we're talking about. You're studying because there is a gap that you're trying to close, or somebody has made specific recommendations for future studies. Once you have identified your own narrowly defined topic and concise problem statement, you are ready to formulate your purpose statement. And the purpose statement is the major objective or intent of the study, and it enables the reader to understand the central thrust of the research. In essence, your research purpose will shed light on or serve to deepen understanding of your research problem. Note that choice of a qualitative approach is directly tied to the research problem and purpose. As the researcher, you actively create the link among problem, purpose, and approach through a process of reflecting on your problem and purpose, focusing on researchable questions and considering how best to address these questions. Thinking along these lines affords a research study methodological congruence. It is important to understand that a research problem should not be modified to fit a particular research approach. But a particular research approach should assist you in answering the research question. You cannot assume a qualitative approach regardless of your research problem. Your research problem, your research questions dictate the methodological approaches that need to be followed. In other words, research approach follows research problem. Or the appropriate research approach is the one that best fits with your research problem. And let us look at the following part of the problem statement if it points to the research approach. This was also extracted from the statement of the problem. And there I've got keywords or key statements or concepts that I've underlined in red to show that they, in a way, can point towards the type of the research method or the research approach that might be adopted. Let me start in the middle. And just above the first red writing, there is a statement that says, similarly, authorities promoting this projects are silent about matters of local community involvement in tourism activities. Then I put that in my head. And when I continue, it says, therefore, it can be concluded that the contribution of the present tourism activities towards the improvement of the livelihoods of the local community is minimal. These statements have been written by me. And when I wrote to them, so I was influenced by time. And yesterday we spoke about transformative paradigm that has influenced the choice of participatory action research in this project, so that the method itself can be used as an element of community empowerment. Now, writing these statements is a clear indication. It's actually talking to what method should fit to achieve the objective of empowerment. And later on, I'm going to show you that there was a specific objective where PAR was actually intended as a methodology that would empower the participants. So this is how the problem statement could have influenced the choice of the method that is going to be qualitative. But within the context of qualitative, which strategy or which design, then participatory action research became a suitable strategy. Now, we move to the research problem, the research purpose, and the research questions. These are the three core elements that form the very backbone of your study. As stated previously, the research problem and purpose contain similar information but are presented differently. We tried to look at that at an earlier example. But the problem statement provides background and context to situate the research problem and also provides a rationale for the importance of the study. It's a repetition. But the research purpose is an extension of the research problem and also provides framework for research questions. There it is. This is an addition. That the research process, the research purpose, which extends the research problem, also provides a framework for the research questions. I want to demonstrate something to you later on, whether we should start with research questions or research papers. We were going to debate that later on because I've got examples where I've got a research question and a research papers and sub-research questions. Then sometimes some people would use objectives together with papers statement. Now, the research questions in turn mirror the research papers. That is, if you look closely, the questions are actually the research papers in narrative form. You see, the research papers is written in narrative form. Or is it vice versa that the questions are actually the research papers in narrative form and they should shed light on the papers? I think that it should be the same, vice versa or the other way around. Because the research questions are directly tied to the research papers. Answering the questions must accomplish the studies papers and also, in the final analysis, contribute to shedding light on addressing the problem. When we answer the questions, we should be accomplishing the study papers or addressing the papers, achieving our papers, which makes us achieve the problem of the problem or of in the study. That is why at the first instance, linkage was made between the problem and the statement and the paper statement. Then we moved further. Apart from linking the problem with the paper statement, we are saying this paper statement, which is seen as an extension of the problem, is also linked to research questions. In that, answering the research questions actually assists us to achieve the purpose of the study, the goal of the study, or the main objective. One must, in effect, be able to trace all the ideas in the research questions back through the purpose statement to the problem statement. Do you see now? It means linking the purpose statement with the research questions. You are actually creating a thread between the problem statement, the purpose statement, and the research questions. So there is a relationship between the research questions and the problem statement, because the research questions are answered in order to solve the existing research problem. This underscores, therefore, that you must ask relevant and effective questions if you want to solve a problem. I've got the research papers here. This is the study which I said did not have the research objectives, but it only had research questions. It did have the overall research questions. It did have the sub-research questions. This study also did not have a research purpose. I was so surprised, and I was forced to turn the overall research question into a purpose statement. And I found it telling very well, because when I assist people who are crafting research questions or who are crafting research papers, they come with a major research question. I assist them in order to develop a purpose statement. They must turn it around. And if they do that, then they create a linkage between the research question and the purpose statement and the problem statement. Because the research question is based on the problem statement. And the research question, the purpose statement is also based on the research question. So you turn around the research question, you need to get the research papers. That is why your sub questions and your sub objectives are more or less the same. You turn around the other one, you turn around research questions, sub research questions, you get sub objectives or secondary objectives. Now I'm going to read what I phrased as a purpose statement, and later on I would read the research question. You would see that they've got a relationship because I just change the wording and make it either a purpose or a question. Then they jelly together. The purpose of this study is to analyze and implement the principles of organizational studies and organizational design to assist catchment management agencies and their CEOs to manage their respective water management areas more effectively so that a better service can be rendered to the stakeholders, which are the public. And the research question is just turning around this purpose statement, reads like this. Can an analysis and implementation of the principles of organizational studies and organizational design assist catchment management agencies and their chief executive officers to manage their respective water management areas more effectively so that a better service can be rendered to their stakeholders, which are the public? You see, now it's just a repetition, but all of them, they belong to different sections. The other one is the purpose, the other one is the research question. But when we do it like this, then we ensure alignment between the two. When we pursue this purpose statement, we will not go wrong. We'll be answering this research question. And if we can answer this research question correctly, there is no way that we will not be able to achieve the purpose, because the two are twins and they've just been turned around alongside each other. And the specific research questions is what if we answer, then we are achieving the purpose statement. And we are actually, if we answer them, we're actually giving effect to the major research question, because all of them should contribute to that research question. If there is misalignment between these sub questions and the major research question, then there is something wrong. Then they should be revised so that there is an alignment. So the specific research questions read like this. And let me only read the first one to show that it actually gives effect to the principal research question. It says, on which theoretical principles are the phenomenon organizational design founded within the context of organizational theory and studies? And I will argue that this objective is given effect to by chapter 3, which is part and parcel of the literature review that has unpacked the theoretical framework. So if this question was not there, I would not have unpacked the theoretical framework in chapter 3. And if I had unpacked the theoretical framework in chapter 3 and did not have this, there would have been a disjuncture between the research questions and the literature review. So it is necessary that this section, the questions and all the other components of the research are actually aligned. Later on, we're going to show that there is a relationship between literature review and the theoretical and the theoretical framework. And we will show that because the overall research question and this one sub question has made reference to the theoretical framework, then there is an alignment between chapter 3, where literature is unpacking theoretical framework, and the research questions, as well as the purpose statement, because the purpose statement says the principles of organizational designs will be explored. So they are explored and they're implemented in the research, but they are explored mainly under literature review so that they are implemented during data collection and data analysis. We will be able to show this later on in some future slides. And look at the specific research objectives. What I did was to turn the specific research questions around, and each of the specific research questions were answered through putting an intent statement that shows what I will do in order to answer the question. And this is reflected through the entire process of conducting research. And it was demonstrated at the end of the research project that these objectives were achieved. And they were achieved because we posed questions in order to actually give responses to them. Then we put objectives as statement of intent. And these statements are part and parcel what strengthens the design, because these are intents of what we will do. The research questions, which can be answered by qualitative and qualitative data, will necessarily correspond directly to the research methodology. Qualitative research is recursive in that it builds on and depends upon all of its components, component parts. We've said this. Qualitative research is also flexible in that is certainly one of its hallmarks. Your research questions are often informed by your personal and professional experiences, literature you have read, and the way that you understand the world, which is a worldview or your positionality. Further, as you begin to implement your research, the preliminary data you collect will inform your research questions. That said, achieving alignment between your research purpose and research questions is key. And I'm so happy that there was a previous speaker who said when she was conducting literature, she found that there were aspects that were emerging, and she went back to go and revise some of the research questions, or she included them, which is related to what we're looking at here. You will not want any of the questions that you may develop to be misaligned with your purpose and and hence with your research problem. Remember that the first chapter of your dissertation is the most critical, and everything that follows hinges on how well this chapter is crafted or is written. This first chapter of the dissertation is also critical in that it forms part of the research proposal. The introductory chapter therefore sets the stage for the study. It also makes a sense of the significance of the problem, contextualizes the study, and provides an introduction to its basic components, most specifically directing the reader to the research problem, research purpose, and research questions. Now, we are going to look at the research purpose and the research methodology. If we don't, we are behind with time. I see that we are left with 34 minutes. If I see that we are too slow, then I will rush towards the end and indicate the examples that are relevant to the text. One of the core issues related to planning and conducting a qualitative study is how to choose an appropriate and suitable research methodology, also referred to as a qualitative genre or tradition. They're referring to the research design. And this is equivalent to what we can see either as focus groups or as participatory exchange research or experiment or a case study. Those are designs. So here they're referring to them as methodology. Yesterday I said Creswell and Creswell referred to them as what they say. They say they are the strategies of inquiry. So these are what they refer to as the suitable methodology. Now, what is the best place to start now? Should your decision be based on research design and philosophical paradigm or your project? What if you don't know quite yet what is the philosophy of your research? Should you choose a methodology that is most familiar to you or that you have had other students using? Should you choose a methodology that will be the easiest to apply? How will you justify your choice? Defining the purpose of your research will help bring you clarity. So the purpose of the research should assist us in choosing the correct methodology. Qualitative inquiry includes a variety of research methodologies, each of which are based on particular views about the social world and how it is known, which is referred to as ontology, and views about knowledge and how it is known, which is epistemology. So our research methodologies or our research designs have got specific principles, or they are based on specific philosophies, or they give effect to other principles, or people have got certain beliefs in terms of those methodologies. And what happens is that when you are conducting the research, Sometimes the research method will assist you to achieve the objectives of that philosophy or to lean towards that thinking, these philosophical assumptions of that research methodology. That is why when we talk about participatory action research as a methodology, it has got its principles that seeks to empower the marginalized, that seeks to ensure political justice or economic justice. So the principle of justice is at play philosophically when we talk about participatory action research. In other words, we will use participatory action research when we want to empower people during the process of conducting research. So different other methodologies have got other objectives. Constructivism will influence people to choose a methodology that will allow to share or to construct their life experiences in line with that thinking. So each methodology has got a specific principle based or that it is based on, and it achieves specific objectives. So it is important when we choose the research methodology that it should assist us towards achieving the purpose of the study, because the purpose of the study is linked to the problem that we have, as well as the research question at play. Each worldview carries with it certain values and perspectives, including how the quality of research is to be evaluated. And these worldviews we dealt with yesterday, they are paradigms we know. Philosophy and method, rather similar to form and function, create an integrated whole. When research is approached without clarity of underlying philosophical constructs, execution will be haphazard, often leading to inaccurate, meaningless findings. Maybe I must rush so that we can find an example to indicate how the choice of a research methodology can assist us to achieve the purpose of the study. But it's said when we want to make a choice of research methodology, we ask the following questions. Which methodology does my intended research topic and problem fit best with? What is the purpose of my research? So the purpose of my research should inform me of the best method that will assist me to achieve the research purpose. Is my worldview aligned with the methodology selected? Why or why not? Is the methodology a comfortable match with my research skills or not? Can I be able to execute, or I will not be able to execute the research methodology? In which case, if I fail to implement it, I will not be able to achieve the desired results. Bearing in mind that qualitative methodologies are informed by different ontological and epistemological foundations, and that the researcher's values and assumptions fundamentally influence everything about how research is conceptualized, conducted, analyzed, and presented, you will need to be somewhat knowledgeable about the various qualitative research methodologies, including their philosophical underpinnings and characteristic applications. And this is the reason why yesterday, when we presented participatory action research, we looked at its principles and its assumptions to show that it is geared towards achieving empowerment. We demonstrated that one. And I've taken that example again to show that indeed, because here our example was on the empowerment of rural communities. Let's see how other parts of the research project could be linked with power as a research methodology. And I've just extracted research objectives of the research project and implemented it like Funduzi tourism framework. And let's just read just the second objective that identified power as an empowerment strategy. It says to utilize just 1.4.2.2. It reads one of the objectives is to utilize participatory action research as a research methodology with a view to encourage the involvement of rural communities in sustainable development. And then let us see how yesterday we described participatory action research, or we just look at its intent and its principles. It assumes that complex social problems are best understood by introducing interventions or actions. So PI is an action because it is a research, but it is also a strategy to solve existing problems. We said this yesterday. But in this method, the researcher is usually a consultant or an organizational member. We said I was a consultant or an organizational member because I facilitated the process of conducting research involving participants to be co-researchers because they themselves collected data, they dictated, they assisted in designing the fieldwork. So that is what it does. Today, I will take you a step forward to show you the results of doing that, how empowered the communities were when I exited the study site. PI is also a simultaneous problem-solving strategy and also insight generation. It contributes to practice, it contributes to generation of theory. This method is also suited for studying unique social problems that cannot be replicated. We said this yesterday. And I want to show you that yesterday I showed to you the keywords such as developmental, participative, and bottom-up approach, development assistance, and the third world conditions, which was characterizing people that are there in the field, but that need the support. And I argued yesterday that PA actually achieved this objective. Later on, I would show you how I've taken this a step further. But let me again remind you of the keywords that describe the impact of PA in research. Keywords are the need for community empowerment, self-actualization, empowerment, self-realization, collaboration, mobilization, transferable skills, lateral, critical, analytical, creative, and innovative thinking, development of community. These are all key statements that I mentioned yesterday. But here, the reason why I'm repeating them is that we are saying that the specific research methodology, or the general tradition should be suited to achieve the objective of the study. And here we just noted that participatory action research was identified as a research methodology that would be used to achieve the purpose of this study because it achieves empowerment. And we said the project is about ensuring sustainable development. So it has to do with empowering people economically, socially, and environmentally. Now, I'm taking you a step further now to show you that towards the end of the study, when I exited the site, all the 4 research teams had produced action plans that if they had implemented, they would have been able to realize self-realization. They would have actually empowered themselves economically by pursuing tourism. And here I'm going to read to you a plan that came from Chieni village. I will also show you the specific activities that they wrote down for themselves, which they said that they will implement before I exited the study site. Objectives that were set by the Chieni team mainly focused on promoting access to catchment, which might be attributed to the location of Chieni village next to the main access route to the lake. The team has also identified the production of artwork as a realistic objective. Before the end of the field period, they had already begun to produce an artwork. One objective did not have set time frames, and therefore it is uncertain how soon the team wanted the objective to be accomplished. But what is important is this artwork that they have identified, even before I went out of the study field, they had started to do. And it means they might have been impacted by this study, or if they had started it before the study was commissioned, then the study emphasized and encouraged them to continue to do what they had already started, because it is part and parcel of pursuing tourism as an economic venture, tourism as an economic activity. Now, here I just want to reflect on this slide, the specific activities that they've identified, all the objectives that they had, to also indicate that they had put specific time frames. And you would see that they also put responsible person there in the front, a person who would ensure that they achieve a specific objective. This is the same as planning that is done in every institution, everywhere where people are producing plans. Look at these objectives. Objective 1, construction of a reception center. That one did not have time frame, but you can have you can see there is a responsible person who is should I say A, but to start the production of artwork for tourists, it was August 2008 when I was still there. So it was already started when it would continue. And Chibase A was the one who was responsible. Establishment of the Chivenda Cultural Village, 2009, Chibase A will have to look at that one. Facilitate development of tourism infrastructure, particularly water and road. Then Netamba would look at that one, and it had to start in 2009. Follow up on the construction of the entrance gate by Toberi Kennedy Chibasa. I think it might mean that they had already started discussions, or they were already thinking about it, or this is what they recommended. But it was to start in November 2008 before I left the site. So this is as far as I could take them. When I went out, they actually had these plans. The villages were 4, the research teams were 4. So in total, there were 4 plans that were introduced. In other words, all the villages that were involved in the study had at the end introduced plans that can be implemented. I have not gone back to make follow-up, but this is what was there when I left the study site. And I did involve Bembe District Local Municipality, Bembe District Municipality, who were in charge of the IDP in that time, who, if they had made follow-up, they would see if these are implemented or they're not implemented. Let me pause now a little bit before I go to the research methodology and research methods, or if I can run to the framework and it demonstrate to you how the framework can streamline aspects. Now here, I've shown you that the research objectives were in line with the research methodology, or the research methodology gave effect to the research objectives. And you must remember, the research objectives are said to be part and parcel of the research, answering the research questions or the research purpose, because all these things are linked together with the statement of a problem as well as the research topic. And if I don't see any question or a contribution, I will rush to show you how the study can give effect to the theoretical framework, or how the theoretical framework can be a thread that links all various components of the research project together.
Yes. You mentioned some possible research designs applicable in qualitative. I'm actually doing, listening to this, I'm actually doing a qualitative.
Yes.
Would you please mention them again? I may have missed 1 or 2.
Okay.
The research design.
I mentioned, I said case studies.
Yes.
Focus groups.
Yes.
And this is participatory action research. But others go further and mention ethnographic studies, there is, what is that, ethnography, and I forgot some studies, but there are a number of qualitative studies that can stand as approaches or methodologies that can be referred to as strategies or designs. But you must also be careful when we choose, we will refer to them as methodologies or as designs, because different authors might refer to them with different concepts. But in this context, methodology refers to research designs, and participatory action research is one of them, and as well as focus group. If we don't have, are you happy?
Thank you. I think it has answered my question.
Okay.
I could be leaning more towards focus group in my research.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I just want this clarity, like you said, it depends on the language of the researcher. So sometimes you see research design being referred to the research approach. Same Criswell in some of his works. So sometimes, so I don't know, does it depend on the researcher to clarify that this is what I mean, so far as there is a literature to back? Because now various approaches you read in a different literature, it is used as a research design. And in other studies too, you see case study as a research design. Sometimes case study also being used as a type of research. So I help that.
I saw Tulani raising her hand. Tulani, do you want to assist?
No. I want to ask a question, but yeah, I can just wait once we are done.
Okay, let me respond. We have just said during literature review, we said every new concept that you introduce in your documentation, you first, if you are suspicious that readers will not understand it, you must explain what it means. But something that I've noted with methodological justification or methodology is that there is an interplay of the use of concepts, and authors use the language that they're comfortable with. And not everybody is an English speaker, but most of them write these books in English. But something that is very, very important is that let us understand that in the research process, you have got broad principles or broad activities. Those broad activities in the language of research might be referred to as the research approach. And the research approach would be inclusive of all the other procedures, the other designs, the other methodologies, the other specific research methods, the tools and the strategies that are used. Some people refer to methods as generic. Methods is not a generic term, and methodology only refers to a design in as far as most of the researchers are concerned. But research approach will refer to whether it is quantitative, qualitative, or mixed methods research. Those are the three research approaches, and those are broad terminologies. So within the context of each of these three, you will, for an example, in qualitative research approach, find specific, so your paradigms, there are paradigms that support qualitative researchers. The world views that the qualitative researchers bring to the research project encourages them to choose qualitative approach. When they do that, then these people are again forced to choose research designs that are in line with the qualitative research approach. So the research design is there. There should be a paradigm that influences the choice of your approach. And then you should have the design that is there, that needs to support the research approach. Then within a specific design, a design can be given effect too by a specific research method, by specific research methods. So the specific research methods, your interviews, your observations, your documentary, whatever, those are the specific strategies or procedures of data collection. They are at the lower level. The designs are in the middle because they are above. Inside them, they house different methods, research methods. Whereas the designs themselves within a specific approach can be more than one. Whereas an approach is a broader one and it houses a number of them. That is how you can assist yourself. So if you use a specific terminology, say for instance, you refer to a design as a methodology, you must be consistent. Then by design, I mean this activity or whatever. In this case, PAR is a design, or in this case, PAR is a methodology. But participatory mapping is a strategy for collecting data. It is referred to as a data collection method. Planning or focus group or face-to-face interviews or in-depth interviews are specific data collection methods. You must unpack it and define it for yourself. And doing this, it helps you to actually understand it better because you read it from many books. When you come across it, you will see the perspective from which the author is writing. Just like today, when I was reading this author, I actually made up my mind that, when he talks about methodology, he refers to a design. When I reuse Creswell, then I refer to a design as a design. So PAR to Creswell and Creswell is a design. But to Sage, the one whose literature I've used today, that PAR is a methodology to him. So this is how I think you can free yourself. But you must be comfortable by choosing something that you want and you defend it.
Is it then possible that in a research I can have focus group as the design and at the same time focus group as the data collection tool method?
Yes. I want to say yes. Yes, you're right. You know what happens with focus groups? Focus groups can be considered a design. And also, when you do interviews in a group, now it's already a focus group interview. When you don't do interviews, when you're not doing interviews, it is a strategy. It is one of the designs because you constitute the group themselves. When you constitute them, you want to use them to collect data. So I think on this you must read. I will also read more so that in future I can clarify it better. But I've tried to make a distinction to myself because other people are saying, actually Creswell is saying focus group is a design. But in another way, he says focus group interviews is a strategy is a procedure for collecting data. Then I can see, he is using the two differently, but he qualifies. He says focus group interviews or focus group design. So all these terminologies are used in context. I'm going to make a linkage between literature review and theoretical or conceptual framework. I will also make a linkage between various parts of the research project and the theoretical framework. I will not read a lot of what the theory says. I'll just go to what I've done and show you. But there's just this one slide which says you should be asking a question. In what theory or concept is my study grounded or based? I will prove something to that. I'll give effect to that. And then it also wants us to ask, to which extent does my conceptual or theoretical framework explicate the ways in which theory or concepts contribute to address this study? So I want to show how the theory or its concepts are part and parcel of addressing the study in the problem. Now, I have identified one project, and I have made reference to it earlier on to you. The establishment of catchment management agencies in South Africa and organizational design perspective. Let me be frank upfront that here I'm going to introduce you to the fact that I've given effect to the theory of organizational design from the beginning, from chapter 1, from the statement of problem until data analysis, data collection and data analysis, the end of the study. I will also be able to demonstrate this in next month when I present the theoretical framework. No, it would be towards the end of the month. I'll present something like that. So here you could see that the topic here makes reference to organizational design. So that is what has forced me to look at a theory that relates to the research topic. And the theory to me has to do with organization, organizational studies or organizational theory. Let me show you something. And I'm going to read to you the problem statement that says something. And let me just read the principles just from the second statement, the principles of the theory of organizational design. It says, this includes, by the way, the problem statement reads like this. It has also been established that many of the problems between the Department of Water and Sanitation and the catchment management agencies are organizational design related. Then this includes unsatisfactory communication channels, chain of command, delegation of authority, division of task, and unit of command, to mention but a few. Now, all these are principles of the theory. Your chain of command, delegation of authority, division of the tasks, and the unity of command. And the study Dr. Valley assisted me to pull those principles to reflect that indeed they are symptomatic of what is the problem in the research problem, that they have not been given to effect to in the operation of the CMA. They remain a problem. And if they remain a problem, then it is pointing to us that indeed these are the principles that should and a bit by bit bringing in the principles of the organizational design theory. We'll see later on here that it was not only the statement of problem. Even when I go to the research question, I'm going to read to you the overall research question. And I think I might have read it earlier on. Yeah, it is the same. It says, can an analysis and implementation of the principles of organizational studies and organizational design assist catchment management agencies and their CEOs to manage their respective water management areas more effectively so that a better service can be rendered to water users? So this is the research question. And this research question follows immediately below the statement of a problem. And we have just read in earlier slides that there should be a link between the statement of a problem and the research question. And here, the statement of problem made reference to the principles of the theory, whereas this research question also makes a reference to the theory. It says analysis and implementation of the principles of organizational studies. And those principles are what I referred as problems that were symptomatic in the management of the organizations, the CMAs. So there is a relationship between the statement of problem and the research question. So the loop and the linkage has been started and it continues. Then from the main research question, we even come to specific research questions where even the first research questions, which I also read in the earlier slides, is also making reference to the theoretical principles. There it says, on which theoretical principles is the phenomenon organizational design founded within the context of organizational design studies? So in other words, we are required in terms of this objective to address theoretical principles of organizational design. And we have said, this is the objective that has made me head chapter 3, which has unpacked and presented the theoretical framework. And that was mainly on organizational design as a theory. So the thread is being built from chapter 1, and then we're going to chapter 2. And I want to show you in the next slide that I've got still in chapter 1, the leading theoretical statements, where this was actually bringing the theory into the fore. What you see here is just the introduction of the leading theoretical statements, but at its bottom, it actually touches on the principles of organizational design. But as we move to chapter 3, I've skipped chapter 2 because chapter 2 did not talk about the theoretical principle. But in chapter 3, we read about organizing and organizational design in public institutions. Then a theoretical perspective. It means this chapter on its own is dedicated on the theory of organizational design. And this is what we refer to as a theoretical framework. And just look at what has been addressed under the theory of organizational design. We noted that during the literature review, there were a number of theories on organizational design. They were from 4.1, from 341 to 345. The classical organizational theory and Taylor. The Frederick Taylor scientific management theory or approach. It has also to do with organization and organizational design. Henry Fayler's administrative management theory or approach also has to do with organizational design. Max Weber bureaucratic management theory, as well as modern organizational theory, all of them. These are the theories that I explored in order to give effect to objective number 1, which said I must explore the principles. And remember, these principles were touched under the problem statement, were touched under the purpose statement, and the overall research questions in order to establish a thread. But I went further. Even in data collection, it's required that in research questions and in research findings, we have to make a thread that has to link earlier sections of the research with the latest one. And as I'm going to show you in the next slides, you will see that while I was collecting data, then I have connected data collection with chapter 3, which means I've connected data collection with even chapter 1, purpose statement, research problem, and the research question, and sub-research questions. You will be able to see it when we come down here. Here, the research questions asked during the focus groups were based on the principles discussed in chapter 3. And these principles were on the theory of organizational design. The theory of organizational design has got the following principles: departmentalization, line and staff functions. And you can see I've referred to chapter 3, 3611, 112 until 3616. All these principles are the principles that I unpacked and presented in chapter 3, so that I could explore the principles of the theory, so that theory I can exhaust. Remember, the earlier slides on the concept says I must answer which theory informs the study, or on which theory is the study based, or which theory is going to be implemented. Now here it is becoming very, very clear that the theory is being implemented in every stage of conducting research. So let me show you how the questions were worded. Now, I first started by describing that principle when I was conducting data. Decentralization principle of organizational theory. When I was collecting data, I first had to, sorry, my apology. I've just killed that beautiful slide. Yeah, I first described the principle of centralization and decentralization. From there, I went down. You can see at the bottom there, questions on the decentralization principle. When I've presented the literature on it, this is on the findings. Colleagues, on the findings, I did present that literature. From there, I used it to generate research questions, specific research questions in the field. This is what I asked the research participants. What is the extent of the decentralization of functions from the Department of Water and Sanitation to the catchment management agencies? And is it to the advantage of the catchment management agencies and their stakeholders? So I was given responses based on this, and you will be able to see some of the responses. Let me move down so that I can complete the entire value chain. You can see the loop that started from chapter 1, it went to chapter 3, now it is going to chapter 4. Let's see if it will be there down again in the next sections. Chapter 4, the responses are, and these are the findings of the participants. It has been indicated that CMAs should, to a large extent, be decentralized entities of the Department of Water and Sanitation. This is how they responded. And they were responding to questions about decentralization. And those questions were based on the theory. So the theory looped down and came to the asking of the questions, to the responding of the questions. So it means even in the data presentations, we could show that linkage. So this is where I end today. And you could see that I was trying to show that alignment is very, very important, and it is also achievable. But it can only be done if we realize it from the beginning of the study, while we're still preparing our plans or our research proposals, so that we can give effect to it during the implementation of the research project, as well as when we wrap up and we present the findings and we close the studies, making the recommendations that are suitable, including recommendations for future studies. Let me stop here so that if you can have comments, you can make them, and we can hand over back to Belinda to close for us.